All right. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining our webinar today. We're here to talk about product update for the on-premise installation of Infor OS. So Infor put out a product announcement or notification in December of last year and talked about the retirement of or the movement of two products into sustained maintenance that a lot of our on-prem Lawson customers have. That would be Infor OS Lite and Infor OS Full, and about what the alternative would be in the local technology runtime. So we're going to talk about what that all means, what the impact will be, what some of your options are, and what the path forward will be. Ultimately, action, will be required this year to stay in support and available, have patches available to you. First, I want to talk a little bit about Intellius. For those of you that may not be aware, we have been around since 1999 in the Infor space the entire time. We are an Infor Alliance partner, and all of our consultants are fully certified in both Infor and Amazon Web Services to support various Infor applications, upgrades, implementations, etc. The consulting services that we have and available would be to support both cloud migrations and upgrades for your Lawson system into version 11 or Cloud Suite. We also do a lot of systems assessments and optimization for your products in terms of cloud readiness and things that could be done today in place. We support new modules as well. So if you're already live on the system and you're looking to bring in a new feature, we have consultants available to help with that. On the technical side, functional side, system administration type work for installations and upgrades if you are on-prem, along with all of the new modules in HR Talent, FSM, and all of the suites in Lawson V10. We also have a number of complementary software offerings. Most notably would be the payroll automation, both for Lawson and Cloud Suite or Global HR Payroll, and the expense management, which would be kind of an alternative, I guess, to Infor's XM that integrates directly with Infor's payroll solution for employee expense entry. So today, this should be a pretty quick update. We'll talk about what's happening with the product, the key takeaways, I guess my interpretation of them, and then we'll open it up for a Q&A. I wanted to level set because I'm getting a lot of questions from my customers about what's going on with this, what's going on with OS Portal. There's a lot of changes happening within the Infor ecosystem, and there's a lot of jargon and terminology that I personally think is very confusing. So I'm going to use some of that jargon today. You're going to hear the jargon going forward, and I just wanted to put together this cheat sheet to kind of talk through it. OP, ST, MT. I think these are pretty self-explanatory, but I think one of the things with OP or on-premises would be, obviously if you run your own system, you manage your own system in your own data center, you're on-prem. But I also want to call out that maybe you have a hosting provider that's not Infor. Somebody else manages your servers. Well, you're still an OP customer within the context of Infor, okay? ST and MT, so both of these are cloud deployments within the Infor cloud ecosystem. So if you run your servers in AWS, you're still an OP customer as far as Infor is concerned. ST refers to the single tenant type deployments within Infor's cloud, whereas MT is the multi-tenant deployments. And I would consider that more of a true SaaS model, a true software as a service. You'll hear the concept of hybrid. Really, that's just a combination of all three of the above, right? And generally speaking, we see hybrid as a bridge to getting ultimately to full multi-tenant or SaaS. Infor OS. So there's a lot of different types or flavors of Infor OS. There are two that we care about today that we're talking about today, Infor OS Lite and Infor OS Full. These are the on-premise versions of this product. I think it's important to understand that even though the name is the same, this is a very different product, technologically speaking, or from a code-based perspective, from what you get with Infor OS in the cloud. I think that's one of the big reasons for LTR and the new kind of new branding that's coming out. This was originally pushed as kind of a replacement for the Mingle Foundation or Mingle 11, Mingle Enterprise. Basically the Mingle that you had when you upgraded to Lawson V10, this is the replacement for that product. The difference between Lite and Full is really a licensing consideration. The Lite product has a much tighter restriction or named user count. and some of the advanced features from the full. The Lite is also, generally speaking, a quote unquote free version, whereas full, or you're already entitled to it as an existing Lawson customer with an active subscription. The full product has an add-on cost in order to be entitled to that. This product is what's going into sustained maintenance at the end of this year. So this product is impacted by this announcement. LTR, the Local Technology Runtime, this is the alternative or the new version or the replacement of Infor OS Lite, Infor OS Full. This product's only available to OP customers on-prem, or if you're self-hosted or have another hosting provider, again, you fall into that OP category. It's the exact same look and feel from an end user perspective. It became available last month, towards the end of the month. And this will be the replacement for Infor OS Lite, Infor OS Full. So if you have that product today, Infor OS Lite, Infor OS Full on-prem, your action required this calendar year will be an upgrade to LTR, which honestly, it to me seems more of, at this point, a rebranding than anything. But for Infor, it's kind of laying the groundwork for supporting advanced technology capabilities going forward and through the end of 2030. Infor OS CE. So I don't really hear the CE used anymore, at least with customers, but the CE stands for Cloud Edition. And I think the big distinction here is there's two tiers of Infor OS, two major tiers. There's the on-prem and the multi-tenant. And going forward, there is no more on-prem Infor OS, so to speak. That's handled by LTR. And Infor OS is really only available to the multi-tenant customer base. There's different tiers of licensing there, Essentials, Professional, and Enterprise. Those really are just going to be different usage restrictions, right? So how much database space do I have in the cloud? Well, with Essentials, it would be less than Professional, and Enterprise would obviously be the biggest. There's more to it than that, but it's usually differentiated by license tiers there. Infor OS CE, the big thing now is that, or the multi-tenant, is it's available to on-premise customers. It's included as something that comes with, if you were to go to quote unquote V11, right? So you're going to upgrade Lawson to HR Talent /GHR FSM. Well, you would get Infor OS as part of that subscription. It's just included as part of the package. That used to be the only way it was really available. And then they released it to the single tenant kind of Lawson customer base. And now it's also available to the on-premise customers. And one thing I just want to clear up. So there's a lot of noise if you subscribe to any of the Infor knowledge base articles, or you're getting email blasts from other vendors. If you are a multi-tenant customer, there's a huge change coming in April with this Infor OS portal. If you're on-premise, ignore it. It does not matter to you. This change only impacts the multi-tenant customers. So any references you see to V2 or Infor OS portal, yes, it's a big deal if you're multi-tenant. If you're on-premise, it doesn't mean anything to you. Essentially, it's an uplift of the user experience that will never be available on-prem, right? It's only impacting multi-tenant customers. So I just wanted to call that out because I've gotten a lot of questions about it, and trying to differentiate, at least what this is versus LTR and how it relates to the on-prem customer base. So this is the product announcement that came out. I'm going to show the KB number that links to this at the end, and I fully encourage you to read through all of it in addition to the FAQ that they've attached. But the cliff notes basically mean if you're an on-prem Lawson V10 customer, you're more than likely you're impacted, and there will be action that's required by the end of this year. Ideally before, right? We want to be live on the new LTR before the product goes into sustained maintenance. But the Infor OS Lite, Infor OS Full, or what we're also calling now Infor OS OP on-prem, it's no longer going to be supported and receiving updates in December of this year. Now, does that mean it's going to disappear and blow up in December? No. What that means is it's no longer going to be receiving patches and fixes. So you can continue to run it, but if there's a security vulnerability, for example, in January of 25, well, they're not going to release a fix for that product. The expectation is that you move to this new LTR. LTR sounds very different, But the reality is, from what we're seeing, is it's not at all. It's a low cost, low effort, low impact upgrade. It's really, to me, I mean, there's a branding change on the back end. The front end, it really looks the same to users. But on the, it's really no different than taking a general update or patch to Infor OS Lite. If you have that today, it's a similar process. So the end users really shouldn't be impacted with this change. Infor is now committing to supporting this LTR platform until 2030. And one thing to call out is they're with this kind of pushing customers to consider or look at the adoption of the multi-tenant Infor OS along with your LTR. So what does that mean with Infor OS tenant? So why would you look at Infor OS multi-tenant? To me, I would really consider this potentially a launch pad for a cloud migration. If you were to look at, moving the rest of your Lawson applications into the cloud, right? Even if you weren't, I still think it's something to consider. Moving to multi-tenant, this does not mean you're doing anything with Lawson. So if you were to adopt Infor OS multi-tenant or MT this year, you would be a hybrid customer, right? Everything with Lawson will remain on-prem in the same data center on the same servers as it exists today. You would basically get rid of your current Mingle or Infor OS servers, and those applications or technologies or services would be running in Infor's cloud and managed by Infor. So what this allows you to do is kind of easily adopt, and this is not the right term to use, but I think it resonates with our customers, the V11 technology, and that's why it's in quotes, or the more modernized cloud technology, without at this point having to undergo a major ERP upgrade, right? Because that's a 12, 18, 24-month project to move the core ERP applications. This is just kind of the technology stack and layer. Why this is interesting to me at this point is I think Infor's gotten pretty competitive with the pricing. So traditionally, to get access to a lot of this advanced technology, Infor was requiring you to license this Infor OS full, which is still on-prem, and I thought was pretty expensive for what, not for what you got, but for what I thought my Lawson customers were going to be using. The pricing with the multi-tenant is a lot more competitive from what I've seen. And there's obviously a lot more services and capabilities that are available with the on-prem, even with Infor OS full. And we'll talk about what some of those are. So that opens the door to a lot of new technologies that can support obviously your Infor ERP systems, but also really the entire enterprise above and beyond what you have within the scope of ERP. I'm going to talk about two that I think are noteworthy. So if you look at the product listing and you get information from Infor, they're going to tell you a bunch of stuff about what Infor OS MT can do, and it can do a lot. But I think there's two that are noteworthy and can deliver immediate ROI within the context of on-prem Lawson customers. So that would be support for advanced single sign-on and the introduction of AI and machine learning. This is not a new concept. It's something I honestly have to talk about with customers every single day. But we all are probably painfully aware that in 2019, 2020, I can't remember, Infor forced all the Lawson customers to adopt ADFS. And really, since that time, ADFS is now old. I mean, nobody likes ADFS anymore. Everyone's moving to the cloud with their IDP. We want Azure, we want Okta, we want Ping, we want whatever, any SAML2 identity provider. So what's not really changed is that Lawson still supports ADFS, and most of our customers are using ADFS. They also have an alternative in Infor STS. And this is not new. This is not news. What I think is news is, technically speaking, what does Infor STS do? It enables Lawson to use now get rid of ADFS, right? We want to go straight to Azure. We want to go to Okta. In order to do that, it has to go through Infor STS. What makes Infor STS available? Technically speaking, from a licensing perspective, that was a reserved feature for Infor OS full, which came with a pretty hefty license fee, in my opinion, for if that was the only thing you were trying to get out of it. It's still a reserved feature, but with the new pricing model with the multi-tenant Infor OS, If you adopted LTR and the multi-tenant OS for what I think is a more competitive price, I think it's a different discussion in terms of moving Lawson off of ADFS. And I have this conversation, I would say every 1 to 2 weeks, I have a customer ask if they, can we get rid of ADFS? Our network guys hate it. We're trying to retire the servers. The entire enterprise moved off ADFS. This is a different conversation now with some of the new products and licensing available through the multi-tenant. So support for these has been available, still is available, but I think maybe has a different pricing model and consideration with these changes that Infor came out with at the end of the year. AI is obviously very trendy, and Infor's on that bandwagon. But what I think is cool about this and kind of noteworthy is there's a lot of features in Infor OS, but what I see, if you're going to the cloud and you're on FSM or HR Talent, you're going that way, we're going to do a lot with Infor OS. But for what I'll call a legacy ERP, because I think Lawson is at that point, you're kind of left behind. So I'm trying to find the things that could add value today, right, with a minimal amount of effort. And I do think this is something. So Infor delivers it is an add-on to Infor OS multi-tenant. It's only available in the multi-tenant. They deliver an AI and kind of ML low-code environment. And from what we've seen, it's fairly simple and straightforward to build a pipeline to ingest your on-prem data into their cloud and deploy end-to-end solutions really in probably 4 to 6 weeks with this low-code tooling. So that includes moving the data, building models, training models, deploying models that can then really provide this concept of augmented intelligence, right? So everyone hears AI and they think of ChatGPT. Well, we're not necessarily putting ChatGPT into our ERP at this point, but I think this concept of augmented intelligence is important, right? So today we all really operate in the human intelligence realm. If we look at this Venn diagram, we rely on human insight and metrics to make decisions. The humans are building reports maybe to find information or to aggregate information for us to perform an audit or for us to make a decision. AI can do a lot of that for you. But the augmented intelligence is this blend or hybrid type of world where AI is helping to identify trends, to make forecasts, predictions, et cetera, based on data sets that are available without having to build these kind of bespoke one-off reports and do custom development, things like that. And then providing insights to a human to then make decisions based on what AI is recommending or presenting those insights. So that augmented intelligence is key in terms of understanding how I think AI would really benefit the organization within the context of ERP. So we would potentially build some sort of model, right? And then create a widget or context application to display that right next to the ERP, right? So if we're doing something on, and I have a couple examples on payables, right? So maybe we're analyzing transactions to look for unusual patterns specific to a vendor or the invoices and payments, right? Did we duplicate a payment? Is there fraudulent activity? This could apply, potentially to payroll as well. So for our payroll processor or our payables processor, presenting that information inside of or next to, the Lawson forms that they're interacting with on a day-to-day basis to help provide quick, rapid insight and deliver value. I think there's a couple of different examples here across a number of modules, but the key takeaway is I do think for if you were to adopt the multi-tenant platform and this was available, I think it's something to consider given the low barrier to entry and potential and cost, I think, for initial implementation and the potential upside or value that it could bring. And I do think it's very easy to integrate with your on-premise Lawson database. So I think it's noteworthy for those reasons. These are some of the other capabilities of multi-tenant OS. I'm not going to go to them in detail. I mean, we'd be happy to talk through more of them, but there's a lot that it offers. I highlighted two in detail that I think are relevant to or deliver immediate value. But you also have, RPA, robotic process automation, this digital assistant or, Alexa or Siri, right? So you can ask the system things or interrogate it and make transactions or run reports off of voice command or chat. The data fabric, um, solution, backend as a service, the burst reporting, and then the concept of this enterprise automation and augmented intelligence services, which are kind of combinations of all of these tools with AI at the center of it. The augmented intelligence services it's kind of I would consider it more of a managed services offering. Whereas if you liked everything I just said about augmented intelligence and AI and you want to implement it, but you don't have the people, right? You can kind of outsource that to Infor to manage it for you. All of those are available in the multi-tenant. So that was a lot of information. A lot of you are probably still thinking, what does this mean to me? So I put together this decision tree to help understand what is the impact, what do I need to go away today and figure out and plan for. So to start it off, are you an on-premise customer? Yes or no, by definition. So on-premise, again, would be you can run as long as you're self-managed or managed by someone else besides Infor, doesn't really matter if it's in the cloud or actually in a data center, you're on-prem. So if you're not an on-premise customer, congratulations, you have nothing to do. If you are an on-premise customer, I think the next thing to consider is what version of Mingle are we using? And this word Mingle is really should be erased from the vocabulary at this point, which is kind of ironic, given how it was pushed on the customer base 10 years ago or so. But that word is not really used anymore, but I think it resonates with the loss of customers. So do you use Mingle today, or are you on a really old version? The one you got when you upgraded to version 10, the SharePoint-based version. Then you would be looking at installing LTR, as a net new product. If you have Infor OS Lite, Infor OS Full, it's going to be a upgrade, right? And no matter what, you need this LTR component. Now, whether or not you need those advanced capabilities, maybe you like the artificial intelligence concept, maybe you really like the SSO concept and moving away from ADFS, those things require Infor OS multi-tenant, which is an add-on cost and is an additional product that you'd be running. So you still need LTR, and then you would add this component on, right? So that would be an additional action item. For LTR, my understanding is if you just go with the basic, hey, we don't want multi-tenant, we're going to stay on-prem, there is still a license exchange required. It should be at no cost. I would recommend reviewing the system requirements and making sure that, yes, this is generally an easy upgrade from OS Lite or OS Full, but you want to make sure you're compatible with, a lot of my customers may have installed Infor OS back on Windows Server 2016 or maybe even 2012, right? So you need to be on a newer version in order to run LTR. Same thing with the database backend. There are minimum version requirements for the move to LTR. So if you're not high enough on OS, and we'll talk about what that means, it might be a multi-step upgrade. All this means is there's a couple more steps. It's a little bit harder, but it's not really a major barrier. Average project timeline here, I would say 3 to 6 weeks, depending on, are you a single step or multi-step? Are you a net new? Are you an upgrade, right? So that's going to vary, but I think 3 to 6 weeks is probably good in terms of most customers and what they should expect. And I think this is important, plan to take LTR patches and upgrades at least once a year, twice is preferable. So Infor releases the patches twice a year. Most of my customers don't do any, they hire someone like us to come in, we install it, they're happy, and then they never touch it again. And they might be running it for 2 to 3 years. I would discourage that. I mean, I would really the expectation of the customer with this technology component is that you are keeping up to date. And the longer you wait, obviously, the bigger the upgrade. So try to follow with Infor's cadence of twice a year, in the spring and the fall, and apply these patches and stay on top of it so you're not falling behind with your system. That multi-step, single-step upgrade. The KB article says that 2021.06 is the minimum, and that's the year 2021, the month of June, right? It's always traditionally been June, December. They say that's the minimum, but when I went in and installed it, it actually forced me to be on December 2021. So that's noteworthy, I guess. But So I'm going to say 2021.12 is the minimum version. And how do you know if you're there? Inside of the application itself, you go to this about toggle and you look at the version. I'm already on LTR, but it would work the same way, if you're still on Infor OS Lite or full, to figure out where you're at and whether or not it's a single step or multi-step upgrade for you. In terms of next steps, obviously we're always happy to meet and talk about your organization specific needs or developing a custom tailored roadmap and helping you through this transition and process. And this is the KB article I think is important. It has the formal product announcement along with a pretty comprehensive FAQ that I would recommend looking at before really making any next steps. With that, it concludes the content that I wanted to talk about. I'll open it up for any questions that anyone has at this point, or otherwise, encourage you to reach out to me directly. My email's on the site or our website, and then also our YouTube page. Just highlight that. There's a lot of, this webinar will be posted to YouTube, and there's also a ton of other content out there for your consumption.
All right, thanks, Rob. I did get a couple of questions. So we don't use Mingle today. Do we need LTR?
If you have Mingle today, whether or not you use it is one thing, but if you have it, the recommendation would be to upgrade to LTR so that you're on a supported technology platform, both from an operating system perspective or, the SharePoint version with Mingle is very old. There's added benefits to undergoing that upgrade.
Okay. Is ADFS still required?
Yes. So unless you opt for I'll call it an upcharge because that's what it is. You're still required to use ADFS, and you're only able to move away from it if you adopt this kind of hybrid LTR plus Infor OS multi-tenant, and that would allow you to go to Azure or Okta or any other identity provider. And I think one thing to note, if you are on Infor OS full today, you already paid the price. You already are entitled to those things. And I believe you would then be entitled to, I guess, this Infor OS multi-tenant. I'm still not quite clear, but I don't think you're going to be hit again on an upcharge if you already chose to go with the Infor OS full. But that's something to work with your account executive on.
All right, and so just to confirm, if we adopt Infor OS in multi-tenant, do we still need LTR?
My understanding is yes. From a technology perspective, I can't exactly explain why, but I was told by the product management team that as it relates to specifically the Lawson ERP, that the LTR component would still be required, even with the multi-tenant to support all of that. So you would have both.
Okay, we are single tenant. What's the impact for us?
If you're a single tenant customer, there's really no impact. You would have actually already adopted the multi-tenant OS. That was a big initiative the past couple of years. So you won't have LTR. You already are on multi-tenant OS, and you should be concerned about the Portal V2 changes that are coming in April, as those do impact you. I see
Here's
one
one I can
question.
answer. Can you send the presentation, please? Yes, we will be sending this presentation out. And then you can also find this one and any others on our YouTube page. And then
One thing,
Rob, you
I
maybe.
saw Joe. Yeah, I saw Joe's comment. So the question was, will the URL be changing when we move? And the answer is no. And I should have called this out earlier. When you move to LTR, the upgrade is almost invisible. I mean, it changes a couple things on the back end, but like your directory structures stay the same. If you're doing a direct upgrade, right, from Lite to LTR, your URL will stay the same, your database will stay the same, your server will stay the same, the directory structure stay the same. It's almost just like a rebranding to me. It's not a huge change. So from the end user perspective, they will never know what happened. The URL is not changing. Nothing on the user experience is changing. And even on the backend perspective, the same directory structures will be there, the same log files, the same everything. The only update is the little icons you see in the remote desktop say LTR instead of Infor OS. I mean, there's more to it than that, but at surface level, that's what I've seen. Someone said, we go from on-prem to cloud in August. Do we need to do anything? I always get this question, and my answer is, how long are you going to keep your Lawson system up on-prem, right? Because most customers, even if you go live in August, you're probably not going to turn it off in August, right? So how long are you going to keep it up? And if it's going to go above and beyond or beyond that December 2024 date, is it an acceptable risk to have that product could have a vulnerability that you can't patch? Now, I would also argue that if you're truly in the cloud, and you want to leave Lawson up in some capacity, you should be running more of a shell. Do you really need Mingle, right? Maybe not. You can go directly to the portal, that type of thing. So it really depends on when you're going live and how long you want to continue running Lawson on-prem in a audit report capacity, and who's going to be accessing it, all those types of things. Michael asked, once we upgrade from on-prem to LTR, how long will it be before we're required again to upgrade to the cloud? I mean, if you read what they're saying, this is the one final push, and then we can support you through 2030. So that's coming from the Infor OS team, which is different from Lawson, even though it's all Infor, these are all segregated different teams. The Lawson team has already said, we've got you through 2030. Now the Infor OS technology team is saying, okay, one more thing, and then we got you through 2030. So I don't think you're going to be forced anywhere after this update, at least until 2030, would be my opinion, I guess. But I do think there are added benefits to consider looking at the multi-tenant. Even if you're not all in on going to Infor's cloud, maybe you're looking at other ERP vendors. I do think, that platform that's available can add value to your current system and can also add value to other systems outside of Infor, outside of ERP, with things like the artificial intelligence component, robotic process automation, and there are reasons to consider it.
We've got one estimated time to install LTR on-prem.
A day, I don't know. I mean, it depends on, do you need a multi-step upgrade? Do you do a single step upgrade? But from an effort perspective, right? If you guys have ever taken an Infor OS patch before, they release them twice a year. So there's 2020 06, 2020 12, 2021 06, 2021 12, 2022 06, right? There's 2 every year, same pattern. If you've ever taken one of those before, it's basically the same exact effort. If you already have Infor OS today. If it's a brand new install for you, it's a little bit different. And if you have to do a multi-step upgrade because you're not yet at, again, I think this is confusing because their KB says this is the minimum version. Oops. Their KB says this is the minimum version, but when I actually did an upgrade on my own sandbox server, and I was on this version and it yelled at me. So my understanding is that the minimum version is 2021.12, even though that's not what their knowledge base article says. But regardless, maybe that gets cleaned up. If you're not on this version, we're going to have to upgrade you twice. Once to get you here as a landing zone, and then once to get you to LTR. Someone said, when you say there is a risk for audit reporting purposes, the historical data will be on the cloud, but if we need to go back to S3, I don't think there's a risk for audit reporting purposes. What the risk is, right? I mean, I'm going to bring up Log4j because everyone remembers it. It was terrible to deal with that. Everyone was scrambling, right? So if another critical security vulnerability comes out, major impact to something like Java, right? And they're using some library that's compromised like Log4j. More than likely, this Infor OS product is going to have the same vulnerability. That's really the risk, right? So if you continue to run this server and you say, it's not a production server anymore, it's read-only, well, you're still running it in your network, right? And if there's a security vulnerability, that's really not even Infor's fault. They just used something else that everyone else did that now has a vulnerability, probably in Java or .NET or whatever. You're going to be vulnerable. And they're basically saying, well, if you're not on LTR, get to LTR because that's the only place that's getting a fix, right? So You then at that point either say, well, we're going to run a server with a security vulnerability, or we're going to shut it off, or we're going to upgrade it to LTR. Those are your only three options. You can't just fix what you have. You need to go through this upgrade. That's really the risk when you continue to run these kind of archive systems, is that the technology will continue to age at the operating system level, at the database level, at the application level, at the Java level. And if there are security vulnerabilities found, how do you remediate them? And if they get old enough that they're out of support by Infor or Microsoft or whoever the vendor is, then you're looking at a big effort to fix it, or you got to shut it down or, isolate it. And that's really what I was talking about. Do you have any other questions, Chandra? I don't see any other ones.
I haven't seen anything else.
All right. Well, thank you all for your time. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll be reaching out when this is available on YouTube or with the recorded webinar content. And again, you're always happy to have a one-off meeting. I left my contact information up there where it's in the PowerPoint. Feel free to reach out and be happy to have an individual conversation with you.